Well, hello, and thank you very much for joining us today for another webinar by the Automotive Industries Associations of Canada. I am sure you're wondering what's the evolution of the behaviors of consumers towards e-commerce in purchasing replacement parts, fluids. Well, we're continuing to ask those questions, conduct some research, and I'm very pleased to have you back today for another iteration of our series on consumer behavior series. So what we're going to do today basically is talk to the expert who is going to come and give you, first of all, the presentation of their findings, but also what it actually means for the automotive aftermarket. So I'd like to start first by acknowledging all the great contributions of our sponsors. Thank you very much for your continued generosity and support. Without your financial contribution, obviously, these kind of research project and event would not be possible. So let's get right in. We're going to cover all of the information in 3 segments. And who's better off to first talk to us about the findings than the researcher who conducted those research himself, Mr. Rick Nadeau. So good afternoon, Rick. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, JF. Bon après-midi. Really happy to be part of this series again. Looking forward to sharing all these research findings with everyone who's joined us here this afternoon.
That's great. Thank you very much. And you're not going to be alone because returning as well to give us a bit of the interpretation of what these findings means for the industry, we also have Mr. James Chandler coming back. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, everyone. Great to be back. Looks like we put this band back together, Rick and JF. Looking forward to it.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I guess, again, further ado, we're going to jump right in and let's turning over for Rick to present the first segment on what are consumers buying online. So Rick, to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jean-Francois. So to get us started off here, before I dive into any research findings, I think it's more important for everyone on the webinar here to understand how this research was done. So just a quick context piece here. So these research findings are based on 2,000 online surveys conducted by vehicle owners, Canadian vehicle owners, obviously. And the timeline of that data collection happened last summer. So from June 8th to June 14th, we collected 2,000 surveys, 2021. So again, keep that in mind. Sometimes when we do present research findings that say, what did you do over the past 12 months? Well, that 12-month time frame really is from June 2021 to June 2020. Anyway, enough of the boring methodological piece. Let's dive into some of the research findings, JF. So I think the first piece that we want to understand is not so much, first of all, what are consumers buying, but how many are buying. And that's the first slide that we want to walk through here. So when we ask the question, did you purchase any vehicle parts or fluids online in the past year? 13% of vehicle owners told us yes, they had done that. And as we can suspect with anything remotely digital or online, those results are, they're going to be different based on who we're talking to, right? And so when we slice and dice the research findings, we see that, for instance, men were practically twice as likely as women to have bought vehicle parts or fluids online over that 1-year period. And again, perhaps not surprisingly, the use of the online shopping mechanism was a lot higher among the younger Canadian vehicle owners. So as you can see there, as the vehicle owner ages, the lower the likelihood for them to have purchased online, ranging from 18% all the way down to 6% there for the 65 and over. The next slide gives us a little bit of an understanding as to why at JF they are in fact doing online shopping. And again, perhaps not surprisingly to a lot of you on the call here, that the top reason, well, is better price. These are in their own words, in the respondents' own words. They're telling us better price, cheaper price. So roughly a third of online shoppers are telling us that that's one of their top reasons. Otherwise, it's the convenience of it. It's so easy now to go online, click a button, your profile is saved. Chances are your previous purchases have been saved as well, and it's just so easy now to go and shop online. Now, to the meat of the original question, which is what are consumers buying online? So again, obviously the question limited to those individuals having purchased over the previous 12 months. we go to the next slide and we see that the top 5 products that were purchased online were motor oil, tires, wiper blades, windshield washer fluid, and brake pads. And obviously the list here goes on, the finer details of those findings in the report that you can access from the AIA. But these are the top 5 or 6 products here. And if we even be so bold as to take a glimpse into the future, we asked intending online shoppers, but what do you think you're going to buy moving forward? And we see that pretty much the usual suspects pop up into the research findings. So among those who do intend on shopping online in the next 12 months or in the near future, nearly half of them feel, I'm probably going to be buying some wiper blades, 38% telling us windshield washer fluid, 37% tires, followed by motor oil, and then filters. So again, kind of that same category of products reappearing among those that had been purchased in the previous 12 months. So that lays a little bit of the groundwork for our discussion here today. James, over to you. What are some of the insights you're kind of pulling from these research findings?
Thanks, Rick, and welcome again, everybody, for joining us. On our first series of late last year, again, I come into this discussion still very bullish on now the e-commerce side in terms of the online marketplace for ASPs. We're very excited what we're seeing from progressive ASP owners out there in terms of their extending their showrooms digitally. And I know we'll be talking about some of the companies that show up on that list, but in terms of the independents that we work with, we're very excited on how assertive they're looking to deploy some of the technologies. Particularly in this question that was raised, we saw a list of products that consumers were purchasing. We've got to take in mind some of those products are being purchased by do-it-for-me individuals, and then that are doing it for themselves. So the do-it-for-yourself, the DIY folks, motor oil, washer fluids, wiper blades, that makes a lot of sense. There's also varying degrees in terms of what we saw in those product lines in terms of just the sheer price point of those products. Tires is in terms of balancing, and installing is a lot different than, wiper fluid. And so that's something that I kind of pulled away when I looked at it, and thinking about some of the ASPs that we work with, and both retailers and wholesalers. What are some of the customer segments that you may want to be looking to attract? So you've got to be thinking about, and then you've also got to be thinking about the kind of product lines that really fit kind of your areas of expertise, and are those types of products that you would want to extend from your showroom into the digital opportunity of online shoppers.
Well, thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Rick. So good insights, good data. I think it's obviously always interesting to get a bit of that exposure and really understand the differences, men and women, the differences in the generational shift that you see. That's very interesting. So we did receive some questions in advance of today's webinar, and I want to maybe place this first questions to you, Rick. Are you seeing a trend related to price versus quality? So since they are making their own research, the consumers are, they are not under the influence of the counterperson, of what they have to promote, or what they have in stock. So what do you think of that, Rick?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, JF, and we could probably do an entire survey on the whole relationship between price and quality. We didn't specifically explore price versus quality in this wave of the study back in 2021. A little bit of that was explored in the previous study in 2019, and we discovered that consumers are particularly more concerned with quality when it comes to things like the brake pads with tires, a little less concerned about quality and just basically making sure they have the right one when it comes to things like their exhaust system, when it comes to wiper blades, perhaps even their battery. But there's also a significant chunk, and that's raised in the question as well, is that you have a significant chunk of consumers who are in fact relying on the tech. They're relying on the service manager to provide them with some guidance, and they're going to take their recommendation on that. So I would imagine, JF, that if I were to hypothesize a bit here, that today's consumer, with COVID, with everything that's going on, the online shop, the pervasiveness of online shopping, that they're probably going to be quite comfortable taking a leap of faith on windshield wipers. I think they're probably going to be doing a little bit more research when it comes to their tires, where the rubber hits the road, literally. And so, again, difficult to say whether they're prepared to completely forego quality for price. All that to not forgetting, of course, that price is an important, very important consideration for anything that Canadians are buying these days. I think it's no secret to anybody that prices are going up on all sorts of consumer goods. And that is, in fact, making Canadians a little bit more alert, a little bit more sensitive to price, perhaps, than they were 4 or 5 years ago. Things to keep in mind there.
Yeah, very good point. And I guess beyond the scope of today's conversation, we're seeing this inflation starting to creep up, and how it's going to have an impact. It's going to be hard to measure, but for sure might change a bit of the online experience for those consumers, for sure. James, when you think about, I'm going to put you on the spot, you think about inflation as relations to e-commerce. Do you think we're going to see more inflation on e-commerce or less? Or what's going to be the impact for the people that sell in a more traditional fashion versus online?
I just go back to what we're seeing with respect to just the overall macro increase in online demand of consumers to engage service providers or just pure e-retailers in a digital experience. And so for those brick and mortar ASPs, for those distributors that are supporting ASPs that are lifeline to their particular wholesale business, I think collectively as an industry, we really need to begin to and accelerate our investment and understanding in terms of e-retailing and e-commerce and the online experience, where that the ease of doing business, right? The visualization of those products and services, how easy it is to navigate through one's individual website, and being able to then engage in this omni-channel, this multi-channel modes of communication that marketers certainly understand. The more that we adapt and become more digitalized with respect to that marketplace, we in the ASP sector that's on this call will certainly meet the demands, because the demand is growing. We'll see it here on the next slides in terms of those companies that people are engaging in digitally.
Right. Well, very well said, and what a great segue to our second segment, which is, okay, so who's buying online? Now let's talk about where are consumer going to buy online. So again, I'm going to pass it back to Rick to cover the second segment of the finding from his research. Rick?
Perfect. Thanks, JF. So here we're going to have a little bit of a glimpse into who are the kind of the big players among those individuals who are in fact buying online. So let's have a look at these first results, JF. So in response to the question, to the best of your recollection, from which websites did you order these parts and fluids? We see at the very top of the list some pretty big players, right? So Amazon, used by 26% of online shoppers, 16% saying they used Canadian Tire, 7% Rock Auto, and again there are some other players in the e-tailing space, of course, and those are in greater detail in the report. But all this to say that Amazon is at the top of the list here, followed by Canadian Tire, positions that they have in fact held quite steadily for the past for as long as we've been doing the consumer behavior series, since 2016. So if we look at the next slide, JF, how has the evolution of these providers evolved? Well, As you can see there, Amazon was roughly 10% among online shoppers back in 2016, the first year we did this survey, and has now gone to 26%. Canadian Tire going from roughly 3% to 16%. The other players in the list remaining relatively stable. eBay has come down a bit, but others like Costco, Walmart, so on and so forth, have remained fairly stable there. Another obvious consideration is that the results we're presenting to you here today are national results. These are based on results across all Canadian online shoppers. There are some regional players. So if we were to look at results strictly among Quebecers, there might be some unique players there versus others out west. The other interesting finding, I think here, JF, is the percent who actually remember the online shopper, the e-tailing website that they use. So if you look at the very last row of this graph, in 2016, 54% really couldn't remember what website they had used, whereas now it's come down to 37%. And to me, what this means is that there's probably a growing relationship between the shopper and the specific e-tailing entities that they're using. They're more likely to remember them because, well, they're using them more often. Or they're limiting their e-tailing, their online experiences to one or two very, very specific e-tailers. So again, this gives us a nice glimpse into who the big e-tailing players are. Now over to you, James. What are your thoughts on these findings?
Yeah, again, interesting findings. And what I take away is, again, it's not being demonstrated here, but we've got to be thinking about it from our ASP perspective. We've got to be looking at who are the customers and clients that we want to attract. Is it these individuals that are, predominantly do it themselves, that are purchasing these products, and are these individuals that are purchasing these products and looking for an ASP to actually complete the installation? And then one must ask, am I willing to take on, a particular, consumer or customer that comes to me with their own supplied parts? And I know we've done some research here leading up, and I know there's a question coming. There's some people on the AIA team behind the scenes here that will be sharing some blogs and articles that we've gathered to kind of help this audience, make some better decisions in terms of their own policy within their particular ASP. Again, we continue to see tremendous opportunity, though, regardless of, those large, big players that we see on that list. Any individual ASP in their own market and who they're trying to attract, we see tremendous opportunity for those individuals to deploy technologies and software to extend their showrooms digitally to get into the e-commerce and e-retailing game, and to make doing business with you easier than has been in the past. And so again, I don't think we're going to see a big shift in terms of what's happening. In a survey like this, Amazon is going to continue to dominate just about every product segment, that's out there, because they're the worldwide leader in e-commerce and e-retailing. But what they've done is they've certainly helped expose consumers on a macro level to online shopping. And so us as an industry really need to pick up the pace in our ability to deploy those technologies on our own online visibility to make doing business with us easier.
Great. So lots of questions coming in, and thank you again for the people online or posting this question, trying to get to some of them. Quick question for you, Rick, a point of clarification, I guess. We talk about e-commerce, and because of the COVID recently, there's been a lot of that, hybrid of curbside pickup, ship to home, pick up at the store. So in the scope of your research, would you say that those results really look at someone who have actually ordered online and got it delivered to their home, or they might have did a curbside pickup or some variations of? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's probably some sort of variation of that. I would imagine most are having it shipped to their home, but again, the choice responses in the survey didn't allow us to kind of decipher whether it was specifically ordered online and then picked up in store, ordered online and curbside picked up. We really didn't go into that level of granularity, JF.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I would add that again. That's why we've got to look at the different products that were expressed from the survey respondees. Something like tires, right? And so many of those particular companies that were displayed there, some of them don't offer an e-commerce or purchasing digital purchasing experience for tires because they don't carry it. Others do that are then looking for a actual brick and mortar ASP to actually complete the installation of those tires. And so again, we as an industry have to consider and, think strategically and long term about our sustainability in terms of, do we just want to become a group of installers for e-retailers, or do we want to step into the game and actually provide what consumers are looking for? Because there's a big difference between, driving to pick up at a retailer wiper washer fluid or some wiper blades, but it's something completely different if we're talking tires and wheels and getting those installed, and then probably looking at other auxiliary services that you want to then actually have completed with a professional service provider, at that install location. Yeah. So, I think there's a way for us to really, shift our thinking and get into the digital game.
Yeah, and when you
even though we didn't,
go ahead, Rick.
And even though we didn't specifically explore this in the survey, I'm sure there is a contingent of individuals who kind of bought into the simplicity of online shopping and decided, oh, hey, you know what? I think I'll buy my wipers online. I think I'll buy, my headlights online. And then when it comes time to actually install these things, it's a different ball game, right? They suddenly realize, well, the buying of it was pretty easy, but to complete the entire customer journey, all of a sudden it's a different ball game, right, James?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's where we can certainly step up our game to really begin to educate these online consumers about the importance of safety, reliability, right? The expertise, the investments we're making in technology, equipment, our people, education, certifications. Again, I don't know other industries where you can just walk in and bring products and then have them, my dentist, me giving the products of dentures to, like, that's just not happening in other industries. And so I think we've got to do a much better job in advocacy, which the AIA is completely leading for us. And we've all got to get behind that.
Yeah. I think it's a great segue. We received this question in advance, and I know we're kind of addressing it in some ways, but, to you, James, do we feel that Amazon is a growing threat to the automotive aftermarket or a future partner? How do you see, the position of Amazon and how it relates to the aftermarket?
Well, that's a great question. I was speaking with an ASP yesterday, on this topic, and here's the reality that both a retailer and then an end consumer can purchase the same type of products at Amazon. Yet the retailer would have their own network of distributors, parts suppliers that they're engaging. And so there's a proliferation that Amazon's been able to amass because of their sheer size and volume. And so are they a threat? Depends how you want to look at it. I view the entire online marketplace as a significant ground for opportunity for our industry, if we're willing to engage, to get educated on what it means to be relevant and visible online, and then to better understand how to actually convert someone who's coming to our website through that customer journey to engage through the sale of the products and services that we want to promote digitally, which, yes, Amazon and large e-retailers can do, but they don't have that immediate connection of that brick and mortar physical location with people that I want to get to know and trust to help me protect the investment of my vehicle. And so again, in terms of who you want to go after, there's a tremendous opportunity for us to move into the e-retailing game, if we can find the right support services and service providers that can help us do that. Because clearly in the discussions that we have with ASPs, is that's what they're struggling with. They're looking for individuals that have that subject matter expertise that can kind of help them extend their showrooms digitally. But there's sheer opportunity. So I don't see them as a direct threat. They're actually helping grow the market. That's how I view it. And I think the market's big enough for RASPs to take advantage of the higher demand on online shopping.
James, another question for you, a bit parallel to this relationship between retailers and the people installing these parts on vehicle. And the question reads, who is handling the warranty when it comes from an online purchase? In my experience, that's the person sending the question, in my experience, the e-tailer tends to wash their hands of the consumer after the purchase is complete. But it's not fair that the ASP is now left carrying the burden of warranty if the part doesn't perform. What's your take on this? And I quite frankly, I've heard that comment regularly. Is where does it leave the ASPs in terms of support for warranty after the install?
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I think that brings it back down to this discussion that we're having, that it's very important for us as an industry to set some policies in place and to set a level of expectation with the type of customers that we want to do business with. If you currently don't have a policy with respect to supply parts from customers, I would strongly recommend that you do. Shamsi is going to provide in the chat a link to a blog of an article that was written from some subject matter experts, performance coaches that support ASPs. And my partner at my company shared that with me the other day, and it was a great article. And again, I think we've got to get educated and protect our own interest for our own sustainability as a business. There's nothing wrong for that, and because there's certain considerations that you're going to need to make, from warranty to legal liability. And again, so we'll share here on today's webinar some articles and blogs and some white papers that people could read. But for yourselves, I would suggest that you speak to your advisors and make sure that you build a policy within your own business to protect the investments that you're making, and to also to attract more of the type of clients that you want to do business with.
That's great. Thank you very much, James. So this, again, is a great segue to move into the third segment of our presentation today. That one is really talking about the online shopping experience and really trying to understand from the consumers, what has been their experience and what can we learn from it. So again, I'm going to pass it back to Rick to present the finding from the research. Rick?
Perfect. So for this segment, the way we've kind of assessed their experience is their likelihood to reuse, essentially. And so what we've done here is we've asked consumers, how likely are you to purchase vehicle parts and fluids moving forward? And our first results here give us a really nice glimpse into, first of all, the overall results. So 13% are very likely to shop online moving forward, to 26% somewhat likely. So already there, we know that we have that 13% from the beginning of our webinar telling us that they have done it over the past 12 months. And now we're seeing that number more than double moving forward. Now, again, we have to be careful about putting too much weight into what consumers say they will do moving forward. But this at a minimum indicates that the overall amount of online shopping, or the amount of individuals doing online shopping, is likely to grow moving forward, a trend that has been consistent over a number of years already. What's telltale, though, in terms of the experience, is that among those who have purchased over the past 12 months, 44% are very likely to do it again. 44% again are somewhat likely. So you have nearly 9 out of 10 out of those previous online shoppers who are quite interested in doing it again. So clearly there's an appetite there. There's a positive experience happening there. There's something that's happening that's right, and they're gonna do it again. Now, in terms of making sure that e-tailers out there are in fact hitting the mark in terms of meeting these online shoppers' needs, in terms of making sure that that experience is as positive as possible, we ask online shoppers, or those who have and those who will shop online, we provided them with this long laundry list of possible website features and attributes and content and asked them how important would these various features and content pieces be. And we see, first of all, on the next slide, the features that raise to the very top. So the top 4 features for online shoppers are Again, perhaps not surprisingly, shipping costs. We already know that they're doing online shopping for the most part, principally because of price sensitivity. We also know that convenience and ease of use is important for our online shoppers. So again, it's not surprisingly that having a built-in search engine is very or somewhat important to these consumers, and having detailed pictures of the parts as well as a detailed menu of parts are also quite important. So these four features represent, if you will, the top tier of the types of features that online shoppers would value. On our next slide, which is a little heavy, I'll admit, I don't usually like to show these really, really heavy slides, so maybe we could go full screen on that. Thank you, JF. So we see that top tier right at the very top of our chart. So what percent are saying that given feature is very important in the kind of that blue and important in the red. The next tier of features, well, yes, they fall into the next tier, but we don't want to shortchange them either, though. These remain fairly important attributes for consumers. So consumers are telling us that they do place some weight into going to an online site and recognizing the brands. So the website features known brands. They like to have that option to have the part delivered to them or picked up in store. They do value those ratings from previous website users for specific parts. And the list goes on there. So the feature and price comparison tool, overall website ratings from previous users, and the features that are valued perhaps a little bit less, if we go all the way down to the bottom of that graph, right? We have things like the online chat support. Interesting for the manufacturers on the call, if there are any, that one of the least valued or the least important considerations for consumers is that parts are manufactured in Canada. Again, we still have close to half who feel that this is an important feature, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to other features, it features near the bottom. And then finally, we have about 35% telling us that that having that website appear at the top of Google searches is important to them. So again, is it important? Yeah, a third of consumers tell us that it's important, but certainly compared to things like shipping costs and those built-in search engines and menus, it pales in comparison. So again, there was a couple of slides there, JF, to give us a bit of an understanding of the online shopping experience. James, over to you. What are your thoughts on this and the impact and implications for our audience?
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record today. So let me pull something that I jotted down earlier. That when we talked about the product specifically that online shoppers would think about purchasing this next following year, that number one product with the largest increase in terms of percentage was tires. Yet then when we looked at where these online shoppers were thinking about who they were thinking about using, many of those companies that were on that list don't currently offer tire shopping online. In today's e-commerce world, there is technology for both tires and wheels to be purchased. It's a little archaic. I've seen some recent technology at SEMA this November that I'm very bullish on. And so we're continuing to see some of the most recent technology, 3D technology, augmented reality that you're seeing in other industries that are more prevalent online in terms of their e-retailing, that moving into our sector. And so again, with respect to ASPs, if you're a distributor and wholesaler, you need to be thinking about your ASPs that are really supporting a large percentage of your business. How equipped are your customers in getting relevant and visible online? If you're an ASP yourself, you've got to be looking at how relevant and visible is my business online. And are we extending our showroom digitally? Are we looking into some of these technologies that we could deploy to make doing business with us easier and to meet some of those requirements that Rick demonstrated on that last slide? I'm extremely bullish, in terms of the opportunity that's there, but encourage more of us to really begin to think about our online presence as a strategic imperative for our future success.
That's great. I want to get back a bit. You mentioned a bit the parts being manufactured in Canada, and I know we got a question online also about the question of, is people motivated by recognizable brands? So I think there is still that link because it did score, I think it was the number 5, features non-brand. So there has, I think, some links to brand. Obviously, being made in Canada may not have the same draw, but ultimately consumers are looking for particular type of product that they could recognize and associate with brands. That's a fair statement to make, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely, and I suspect that, and it's hard to say whether it's a COVID phenomenon that this sudden surge in online shopping, and consumers are like, well, I can buy so many other things, so many other consumer goods online. Well, maybe I should consider buying my motor oil or my wiper blades online as well, so on and so forth, and so we may be seeing a bit of an insurgence into the online buying market for among if you will, the less knowledgeable of those vehicle owners, right? And for them, what do they gravitate to? Well, they're most likely to gravitate first and foremost to brands that they recognize, right? So it's not just those individuals who in previous waves were probably, they do it for themselves. They're very knowledgeable about product and brand and quality and where it's from and how it works. We're seeing now a bit more of the kind of the masses kind of going into this, and well, brand matters to a lot of individuals in that category.
Right. Rick?
JF, quick point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so again, earlier I just pulled, since they're publicly traded companies, both Canadian Tire and Amazon. Amazon is up 10% year over year on their fiscal year in terms of e-commerce increase in transactions, volume of sales. Canadian Tire, their e-commerce has shot up 3 times that, a little over 30%. Again, Amazon much larger in terms of total market share in terms of e-commerce because they're purely an e-retailer. Canadian Tire, you can see, is clearly saw an opportunity, which had to do with the pandemic, and they're seizing that opportunity for people to engage them through an online e-retailing channel for either pickup or drop off. That's clearly there. And so again, I just reiterate that the entire marketplace in terms of consumers, we see that the demand is significantly up within the ASPs, both, and that also includes for online opportunities. So I think those are just signals that we've got to be looking at to beginning to equip ourselves to be there and to make that experience easy for online shoppers.
Absolutely, James. A question, Rick, for you. Any idea about the purchase frequency, the average transaction, or the number of transactions per year, the number of dollars spent? Was any questions asked in regards to these aspects?
Yeah, we didn't get into the number of transactions. We did get average spend though. So this year and the number's been actually pretty stable for the last couple of waves. So for the average online shopper buying online parts and fluids, it's in and around the $500 mark. So that's about a number that really has. Obviously, there individuals who are buying exhaust parts and buying a lot of equipment, their number's going to be a lot higher. And then you have people who are just buying windshield washer fluid, right. And they fall into that same category, right? So you have a broad spectrum there of shoppers, but the average and median value came in at around $500 there.
Right. Great way to say, please go on the website and download the full report so you get all of these data points after this webinar for sure. Rick, one more question. Shipping seems to be very important, probably in terms of cost, but also in terms of how fast people can get their hands on these goods. Any questions that relates to shipping times as one of the factors as part of the research?
No. Nothing specific in that space, JF. But again, if we just take a step back and consider where we're at in terms of average shipping costs and average shipping duration expectations, companies like Amazon, as big as they are setting the bar, right? They're setting expectations, and it's making it difficult to some extent for a lot of other e-tailers to follow in that space. I mean, goodness, if you've got Prime, you can get your part, your product, your broom, your windshield washer fluid, you name it, within 24 hours. That's where people's expectations are slowly moving towards.
Sure. Good. I'd like to also move to some of the questions we had received in advance. of today's webinar. And one I will direct to James. And what do companies need to do from an e-commerce standpoint to stand out to customers?
Okay, so that's a great question. And, I love that stand out piece. So first, for us to stand out, to be visible, we first got to have some type of measurement, some type of review to understand where is my individual business. If I'm a wholesaler, distributor, if I'm a retailer, how do we show up online? How relevant and visible are we online? And so, that's an exercise that I would encourage everyone to do. There's certainly subject matter experts and companies that provide audits and reviews, to help you understand where you are. Once you've got to that, then as you start to understand what's happening in terms of my relevancy online, my visibility online, then you got to start to look at, okay, when visitors are coming to our website, what are they doing? Again, this is all data, this is all digital. Everything can be tracked. Many of us may not have those tracking tools in place, but if we do, then we can start to look at what that traffic is. So first, you got to understand how relevant, visible are we online? Are we measuring what's happening through our online channels? Do we actually have that set up? And then we can begin to look at, if we are currently in the e-commerce game, what those conversions are looking at and those percentage of conversions. So then we can begin to make some improvements, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. And so certainly measurement is going to be a key with respect to, getting online. Once you've done that, then as you start to look at some of the technologies that are available to make shopping with you easier, you'll be able to measure it more effectively and build an ROI case on making those investments.
Well said.
Yeah, I think that laundry list of features that I provided as part of the survey results is also a very good, I don't want to say a complete roadmap or a perfect roadmap. I mean, each retailer is going to be a little different, as James has clearly outlined there. But in terms of the features, what's important is making sure that the customer has an easy, positive experience. I mean, the reason the online chat support is so low is that, well, heck, if you're doing a really good job with all the other stuff, you don't need that online chat support. If you have a really robust search engine, a really robust set of menus, so on and so forth, then you don't need the online chat support. The customer can go on there, easily find what they want. They can compare it to other parts, compare prices, off they go. And if the shipping cost is reasonable, then it's going to be a successful transaction.
Well said. One more question that we also receive in advance of today's webinar: how different are consumer behaviors pre-COVID versus during COVID? And I'll ask both of you to answer that question. So, Rick, what's your take on this?
Well, I think the most important thing that we need to be mindful here, right, is the driving behaviors. Driving trends we know have completely changed pre-COVID compared to during COVID. Hoping that soon enough we'll start talking about post-COVID, but we'll still stay in the during COVID phase for now. But we know that driving behaviors have changed. So what does this mean? Certainly, it meant at the very beginning you had fewer individuals feeling a need to go into bays to get their prevent done and get maintenance done. It meant certainly a dip in terms of what they're buying online in relation to their vehicle. And then during COVID, again, we're seeing other macroeconomic elements that are having an impact on consumer behavior, right? So we're seeing some inflation. We're seeing individuals who are losing their job. We're seeing net salaries decreasing in relation to inflation, net salaries decreasing perhaps because of cut hours. So the economic realities of Canadians have changed. And uncertainty, probably an understatement, uncertainty has definitely set into the consumer mindset. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, literally tomorrow, from an economic and social perspective. So are those environments in which individuals and consumers are willing to go out there and make big ticket purchases, make big investments on their vehicles? Probably not. So important elements to consider there, and it has all sorts of implications in terms of the conversations that ASPs need to be having with their customers. Something that I've been stressing since 2016 when we first started working together is that I feel ASPs need to know their customers, because customers are so wide and varied in terms of what they're driving, how they're driving, why they're driving, how much they spend, how much they earn. There's just so many segments involved here that to effectively engage and build that relationship, which is taking the long view on their customers, they need to have conversations with their customers and they need to listen to the customers. And nothing has made that more important than the pandemic, which has added all of these added dimensions, right? They're not driving as much. Will they be driving? Are they now taking longer trips because they don't want to fly or take the train? Has their economic reality changed because of the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera?
Right. Well, very well said. So, James, for you, what's your take on that question?
Again, I said it on the first series that we kicked off last year, and I'll say it again. We're tremendously bullish on the aftermarket in terms of demand. Yes, it's going to continue to pick up, but those of us that work or support ASPs, we see it. They're stretched. Their bays have been full. There's a lack of labor capacity in terms of labor supply to meet that capacity. And, Rick touched on it, and I certainly support this position. We're in a tremendous opportunity to really get clear about who are the type of clients that we want to serve and to go get more of those types of clients. And then, well, how do I do that? It really starts with some of the business intelligence, and for us to continue through this modernization and this digitalization of our business. The more that we utilize technology, utilize business intelligence by taking a look at what types of makes and models of vehicles maybe that we want to attract. If I want to be focused on import vehicles versus domestic, there's actual people are searching for certain service providers that have experience with BMWs, Mercedes. Well, if that's who you want to go after, there's ways to attract those types of consumers who are searching for service providers in your market to perform those types of services. But if we don't really understand how relevant we are online, how visible we are online, and actually casting a net to actually attract those types of customers, we're actually just reacting rather than being proactive and strategic about the type of business that we want to build and why. And so I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to get smarter with respect to data and intelligence. And then in terms of where the macro shifts and trends are going, hey, listen, we're certainly going to continue to experience this COVID and pandemic, but we all know we're an essential service. And so, we got to continue to protect our employees, to protect our customers, and utilize technology to help improve that experience and those modes of communication. Because if they're not seeing us as regularly and we're unsure about how much they're using their vehicle, should we get proactive and send them a text or an email and say, hey, what's changed in your driving habits? Maybe we just want you to bring your vehicle in, even if you're not driving it that much, because we just want to do our 360 inspection just to make sure you're safe when you start driving more. Like, that's a proactive step that we can take. But if we're not collecting email addresses, then it's very difficult to make all those phone calls. And so, again, we've really got to begin to shift how we're doing business to make it easier to stay in touch with the clients that we want to serve.
Right. Well,
and go ahead and bring in those wipers you bought online last week.
There you go. Yeah, just make sure we've got a policy when they're bringing in those products. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well said, gentlemen. Well, listen, we do have a few minutes left. We'll just gonna basically go through some of the questions we received, and if you have some online, we're also going to cover them as well. Right from the get-go, there was a question. Let me see. Are these customers, you think, really going to be loyal? Why should we do business with these online customers bringing these parts to an ASP to be installed? Again, are they going to be loyal? Should we do business with those customers?
Yeah, I'll start. And, certainly, again, I think that just kind of reiterates some of the points that I was making, that we've got to be looking at our business and be thinking about who it is that we want to attract. Are we looking for those that are just looking for repair and installation and they're very price sensitive? Or are we looking for those types of clients that are the Canadian vehicle drivers that we want to help them get ahead by managing this large investment that they've made and actually ensure that their vehicle performs right for its engineered life of that vehicle for an ongoing maintenance and safety of that vehicle. And so to attract those types of customers has a requirement from us to really think about who are we serving and how are we serving those clients. And so certainly I would say that, the more that we can actually look at the data and some intelligence in our own business, the better off we would be. And again, there's tremendous amount of software companies, technology companies that are moving into the automotive, specifically the automotive aftermarket, because they see a void. These are solutions providers that want to equip us to make better informed business decisions about how we're going to serve the clients that we want to go after. And so that's why I'm very bullish on the future, because it looks bright.
And Rick, we again covered the fact that brand was one of the, not the top tier, but at least right at the top of the second tier. So that would indicate some form of loyalty of customers if they are looking for those brands. Is that a fair estimate to make?
I think in an environment where they're probably not entirely familiar with the full range of products that are out there, they're going to gravitate to those known brands, and then it'll be proof in the pudding in terms of whether that product works to their satisfaction and so on and so forth. In the same way that a consumer will look for an ASP, it's they'll probably gravitate first and foremost to probably a banner, in the absence of anything else. And then it'll be up to the banner to prove their worth. But to add to James's point as well, that this whole kind of, do you want to be attracting individuals who are price shopping? Well, it's the classic, what do you want to become when you grow up kind of a question. Certainly you can be part of the race to the bottom, which is to just kind of compete on price and just be completely transactional. Or do you want to build a relationship and open yourself up to those kinds of engagements with customers that are in fact higher value? And every ASP knows that some transactions, some maintenance and some repair are certainly more profitable than other types of maintenance and repair. And you want to be, I would imagine, more profitable in the long term. Right. So have those conversations. And I mean, heck, and James, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there will be slow times in every business, and there's seasonality to a lot of this business. And those may be instances where, okay, I'll make sure that my techs are busy and the bays are full by having these kinds of transactions come through. But in the end of the day, there has to be work towards having greater engagement with customers.
Right. So, and the thing is a good segue, because one of the questions we asked was, what is your opinion in the most crucial takeaway for wholesale retail aftermarket businesses? But I will supplement as well to you, James, that we also got a question. It says, would you find it important for a jobber store wholesaler with online presence to have links to ASPs as a potential install partner on certain items? So do you think there should be some of that partnership if you're a online wholesaler's jobber store? Do you get that? And I guess goes a bit in the same line of that question we would ask.
Absolutely. Again, I'm a big team and collaborative type of individual, and so are we at our agency. And so, to us, these strategic alliances and partnerships should be what we're talking about. We should be shifting these conversations from, hey, how much can I actually just sell into a retailer? And we need to get more concerned on how are we helping to equip that retailer on his sell-out strategy, in terms of, because an individual ASP doesn't have as much resources as maybe some of the key vendors and suppliers. But are they actually thinking in a partnership, approach? Because they have some online visibility and relevancy that me as the individual ASP does not. So to that point that was shared in the chat, creating lists of who are the retailers that we recommend, and then vice versa. Retailers say, here's why I work with a particular type of supplier, and the parts that we collectively, are utilizing in terms of, that quality, and then us standing behind those particular products in terms of our warranty. because that's what e-retailers can't do. And so if we had more conversations about strategically our sustainability long-term, the better we would be able to educate consumers. Because clearly what I've seen in the time that we've been spending and looking at consumer behaviors online is, right, there's just a gap and void coming from our industry, communicating to consumers on what the expectations need to be. So therefore, that's why they're going to Amazon, because Amazon sells a lot of stuff. So I guess if Amazon starts selling automotive parts, they must know something about automotive parts. Well, do they really? Right? Do they really know as much about that than you and the investments that you've made? No, they're just big. And so we've got to really start thinking smarter about how we're going to really communicate and make consumers aware of why we're so important as an essential service to the livelihood of the economy here in Canada. So that's me and my preach for the day.
That's great,
JF.
James. That's great. One last question, and I guess I'll take that question in. And what is your take on the lack of MAP and RPP pricing policies from manufacturers in this country? And I guess I'll take the opportunity just to briefly talk about the fact that last year, we had a webinar with our good friend Paul McCarthy, the head of AASA, the Aftermarket Supplier Association in the US, who's also been promoting and talking about manufacturers' advertised pricing, a way to essentially create a more level playing field in the online world. And I guess at the time what we learned from that is that, yes, MAP is definitely a great tool for combating the appearance of price erosion. It is also great to help in brand protection, in the image of brands as well. And further, so enable the players who are providing that frontline experience, that frontline customer service, to be able to play in the marketplace and be, excelling in that field. But there's also what we learned from MAP experiences that there's a lot of legal requirements. It's something that, yes, we would like to see more, but in the same time, that's going to be done cautiously, properly by the volunteer, manufacturers who wants to do this, but very much in the lands of making sure that they are seeking legal advice and doing this in a way that complies with all legal requirements. So I think that's going to be sort of my short answer to, is there an opportunity to have manufacturers advertise pricing? Yes, there could be. There are systems in place, but we need to make sure you understand that there's a lot of requirements tied into this. We've come to almost at the top of the hour. I'll leave you to Rick and James maybe to do a short closing statement before we wrap up today's webinar. Rick?
Sure. So I think, if anything, what we're taking away from a lot of our findings here in our conversation today is that the online space is making that conversation with customers all the more important. And what does this ultimately mean for the skill sets of ASPs, skill sets of service managers, people behind the desk, maybe even some of your techs, is that those skill sets need to go beyond just the tech part, that you need to make sure that there are sufficient training around there. And in terms of the soft skills, being able to communicate, being able to listen. There are the classic essential skills. If you Google essential skills, you'll quickly see the short list of essential skills that are important to anyone being able to perform effectively in their job. And in that list are communication and listening skills. So if anything we are learning at this point in the industry is all those skills are quite important.
Excellent. James?
Yeah, and again, I'll leave everyone with, again, this study is another example of the opportunity that we have ahead of us, that we've got to be thinking about how we extend our showrooms digitally. We've got to become more comfortable in the digitalization and the modernization of our business as it relates to the expectation that consumers have in today's economy. And let's get more educated. Let's get more assertive and proactive in making those changes. Let's start to lead. Let's start to collaborate and partner. Let's leverage the AIA. Let's leverage associations, and let's make it easier for consumers to do business with us. And let's go get more of those customers that we want. Thank you.
Great. Well, that's great. Again, to both of you, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for your insight. It's much appreciated. And to all of you online, I'm hoping that you found this webinar very interesting. I encourage you to visit the AIA website to download the complete report. Also, please look forward to receive a survey. We're trying to find, from your perspective, what you like, didn't like about today's experience and our research, and give us some insights for the future. Thank you to all of our sponsors who continue to make these report possible. And again, until next time, well, take care.